Welcome in now, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who joins us live from Capitol Hill. Senator Cruz, great to have you with us.
John, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start with Ukraine. We were talking with Congressman James Comer earlier about the need for more oversight and some accounting on where that money's going. The other question I had for him, you know, if this goes the wrong way, people don't like what they're seeing. We know this is not necessarily popular with the American public. Are you concerned what happens, though, to Ukraine if that funding is cut off?
Well, listen, I think there clearly needs to be more oversight of where the money's being spent in Ukraine. The Democrats don't want that oversight. The Democrats have been more than happy just to pour billions and billions of dollars down a rat hole. And I think one of the good things about an upcoming Republican majority in the House is that we're finally going to have that oversight. You are right that it is in America's interest for Ukraine to win. We don't want Russia to win. We don't want Putin to get stronger. Why is that? It's not because of some general inchoate interest in democracy or international norms or whatever gobbledygook that you get either Democrats or some Republicans talking about. The reason we want Putin to lose is because Putin is our enemy, because Putin has described the collapse of the Soviet Union as the greatest geopolitical disaster of the 21st century, and we don't want our enemies to get stronger. Vladimir Putin is a KGB thug, and it's important for him to suffer a crushing defeat. I'll tell you also, John, what is particularly frustrating about this war in Ukraine is it is utterly unnecessary. The reason we have a war in Ukraine is because of Joe Biden's weakness and his appeasement of our enemies. Every enemy of America, this White House has shown weakness towards, and in particular, the Ukraine war was caused when Joe Biden waived the sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline, sanctions that I authored. I wrote into law, President Trump signed them into law, and we stopped that pipeline.
Senator,
Joe Biden started his presidency by waiving those sanctions and giving a gift to Putin and Russia. That caused the war in Ukraine.
Senator, you mentioned Joe Biden's weakness on foreign policy. I mean, I think you could describe his response to what's happening with Apple and China right now as somewhat tepid, maybe weak as well. I wanted to get your take on that and these reports that Apple is suppressing AirDrop, which is a vital tool for any dissident who wants to push back against the CCP. What's your take on all this?
Look, I think it's incredibly concerning. Number one, Apple's complicity with the Chinese Communist Party, with the murderous, oppressive, torturing, evil communist regime in China, and yet big tech is more than happy to climb into bed with them, to be fully in bed with them. I think Apple should be ashamed that they are participating with the Chinese Communist government in silencing dissidents. And I also think Joe Biden and the Democrats should be ashamed because Biden can't muster up even a word of support. This is a moment like Tiananmen Square, a moment where there are 1.3 billion Chinese people who yearn to be free of the communist oppression they have in China. And they're taking incredible risk protesting on the street. But yet today's Democrat Party in Washington is so in bed with China, just like big tech is, that Joe Biden can't bring himself to speak out on behalf of the protesters. I think it's wrong. And I think we ought to be vigorously giving voice, standing with the protesters in China, standing with the protesters in Iran, standing with the protesters in Cuba and Venezuela. Everywhere protesters are standing up against anti-American repressive regimes, we ought to be giving encouragement to that. Sadly, neither big tech nor the Democrats are willing to do that.
Yeah, Apple has a major presence in Texas, right? If I'm not mistaken, their financial headquarters is there in Austin. Do you anticipate any kind of pushback from Governor Abbott or anybody else in Texas?
Look, I think if Apple and other companies make the decision that they are more interested in, number one, manufacturing products in China, and number two, accessing the Chinese market than they are in standing with the United States of America, I think there are going to be real and significant repercussions. I think this is also intertwined with the push from the Biden White House and from Democrats for Apple to deplatform Twitter. The left is so mad that Elon Musk purchased Twitter and made a very simple decision. We're going to allow free speech. We're going to allow people to speak. We're not going to censor you even if we disagree with you. And the left is losing their mind. Frankly, today's Democratic Party, today's big tech, today's corporate America is just like the communists in China, which is they want to censor, they want to silence their opponents. If your opponents are wrong, lay out the reasons why they're wrong. Argue with them on the merits, but today's left would rather use power to silence them. And I got to say, if Apple tries to deplatform Twitter, I think it would be a massive escalation, and I think it would redound very badly for Apple if they give in to the calls from today's censoring left.
Would you consider some sort of antitrust legislation against Apple, maybe? Because this is basically a monopoly, what they have with this App Store.
Yes. Look, I have been leading the fight in the Senate for a long time against the power of big tech, the power of a handful of corrupt oligarchs who are abusing their power more and more. I think big tech is the single greatest threat to free speech in the United States of America. I think it's the greatest threat to free and fair elections, and I think we should use every tool we have to rein in their abuse of power. We saw big tech in the 2020 election at the request of the FBI censor the story on Hunter Biden's laptop. We now know that story was true. We saw big tech at the request of Dr. Fauci censor stories and posts about the origins of COVID-19 coming from the Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China. Again, big tech. Mark Zuckerberg was more than happy to comply with Dr. Fauci's written request that he censor any Americans reporting on what we now know is almost certainly true, that this pandemic, this virus, escaped from a Chinese government lab. Big tech is not our friend, and I think we should use every tool we have to rein in their abuse of power.
All right, lastly, Senator, real quick, what's going on up there with these spending bills in Washington, D.C.? Are we going to see a government shutdown?
Well, I don't think we'll see a government shutdown, at least not a prolonged one, but I'll tell you, John, it's really quite amazing. Senate Republican leadership, Mitch McConnell, is pushing to pass what's called an omnibus bill, which would fund the entirety of the federal government through September 30th of last year. What he's trying to pass is Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi's appropriations bills.
Yeah.
Why on earth would a lame duck Congress pass Nancy Pelosi's appropriation bills when in just a few weeks we're going to have a Republican House of Representatives? I believe it should be the Republican House of Representatives that makes spending decisions. Right now, Senate leadership is trying to give away that leverage. I do a podcast 3 times a week called Verdict with Ted Cruz. The podcast today discusses in depth how Republican leadership in the Senate is trying to emasculate the incoming Republican majority in the House by taking away their ability to pass any spending legislation for nearly the entirety of next year. I think it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that coming up here. Dick Morris is going to join me for a conversation on that, but that is very concerning, just as concerning as it is for conservatives who saw those 12 Republicans vote for that marriage bill as well. Well, we would love to talk more about that, but we are out of time, unfortunately. We've got to go. Senator Ted Cruz, always great to see you.